Hello and welcome to another episode of Fundy Tidings. I'm your host Jay Remer, and with me today is Julie Atkinson, who is the director of Sophia Recovery Centre, and Stephanie Chaisson, who is someone who participated in the program and is going to share some of her story with us. So Julie, it's very exciting, first of all, to have you both here. I'm really excited to, having been introduced to Sophia Recovery Centre, and to have the opportunity to find out more about it, because I know our viewers are going to be keen to hear what you have to say. So if you could tell us a little bit about the center and what it does and so forth, that would be a great place to start.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having us in. So Sophia Recovery Centre is a not-for-profit organization. We were founded in 2008, and we're a place where women can come to find support for recovery from addictions. So that would include the addictions that everyone thinks of, which of course alcohol and drugs, but actually we provide support for women who have any kind of addiction, so whether that might be shopping or sugar or gambling. It's a place that we are very welcoming to all who think that they need to find recovery for the challenges that are in their life. So our approach to providing support is a pretty unique one, and it is pretty much we're the only organization offering this kind of support in New Brunswick. So we have a peer support model, so a lot of our staff have lived experience. And when women come in looking for help, they meet other women who are in recovery, and that's key to their success, is that they see other women who have battled the demon of addiction and they've conquered it and they are living in recovery. But we also have professional staff and those with clinical background to provide counseling services and other supports. So we kind of come at it from a number of different directions, and every woman is treated as an individual. So she comes in and she shares where she is, what her struggle is, and then somebody meets with her one-on-one and talks about what is the recovery pathway that's going to make sense for her and what's the first step on that journey. One of the things we're really aware of is that recovery is different for everyone, and that people start at different places, and that it's sometimes not a linear journey either. And sometimes people try something and it works for a bit and then it doesn't work, or something happens and they need to sort of start over. And so one of the beautiful things about the way we approach supporting women is that it's an open-ended relationship that we form with the women who come into the center, and they come in and we're there for them. And we have structured groups if that's what they'd like to do, if they want to attend a group once a week, if they want to meet with someone one-on-one, that's an option. Or if they just want to be part of some of our more informal programming, if they want to drop in from time to time to have a coffee, attend an art class, meditation, a lot of different ways that women can form connections with others in the recovery community and find support that way. And that's something that women tell us is really meaningful. Sorry.
No. I think that whole focus on relationship is so important, because so often addiction can be caused by poor relationships. And so forming healthy relationships is a wonderful opportunity. So didn't mean to interrupt, but thank you.
No, that's absolutely the case, and it is very relationship based for sure. And women often come in with all kinds of life experiences that have been part of the reason maybe why they have an addiction is because of hard things that have happened to them. And they've been using maybe a substance to help them deal with something really difficult.
Well,
so
trauma is trauma not the
it is trauma informed.
Yeah.
100%. And so when they are in recovery and they're not using that substance as a coping mechanism anymore, there's all kinds of things they need to learn how to do without the substance. And that's where Sophia comes in that open-ended way to provide that support and coping skills and learning how to live in the world and form healthy relationships. That's really what it's all about.
Julie, could you just explain the significance of why it is open to women only?
Yeah, I can talk about that. So addiction is different for women than it is for men, and recovery support is different for women. The experience of recovery support is different. There are supports that are available from public sector healthcare providers through Horizon, and people can avail themselves of those services like detox and a rehab program. And those are generally provided, in a co-ed format for whoever needs them. Oftentimes our experience has been that women need a safe space, and that's really, really important for women to feel that they can be vulnerable and really cope with some of the hard things that they've gone through and be honest about those. And so part of the being only women focused is to provide that safe space for women and to meet their unique needs. Women are often carrying domestic duties that men are not. They sometimes have to juggle childcare. And so we need to have programs that meet those specific needs as well. And the evidence shows that women do better when they receive support in women-only settings.
Mm-hmm. So, as we know, the mental health care system in the world is weak. It's not at its best. And so what I'm wondering is how Sophia, what the niche is that it fills that government doesn't fill, because it's a remarkable program, and I just think that we need to find out a little more about it.
Yeah, so Sophia is intentionally community-based, so it's embedded in the community where women live and work and play, and it provides that care on an ongoing basis. So if you need support from a healthcare provider, you can go and you can make an appointment and you can have a session, and then you'll be discharged. Mm-hmm. So we understand that recovery is not a one and done type of arrangement, and that people actually need ongoing, continuing care. And we want women to know, if you need to drop in for services for 1 year, that's great. If you need to continue to drop into and use our programs for 15 years, that's great. Mm-hmm. We're here for you. The programs will be here for you. And these relationships that you're forming with our staff and with other women that you meet here are people that you can continue to rely on as you live your life. Mm-hmm. So that's a big difference between the way you would use an appointment in a professional setting.
Yeah, I find this to be fascinating and so refreshing, because it is the way that we need to develop. I mean, if you think that 25% of the population is suffering mm-hmm. unnecessarily from some form of mental illness or disease at any given time, exactly. Over the course of time, most of us rub shoulders with something like that, and most of us are addicted to something. Mm-hmm. And becoming aware of that and deciding that you want to do something about it is a huge step forward. So maybe this would be a good time, Stephanie, for you to share some of your experience with Sophia and your recovery, because we're all in recovery. I don't know about you, Julie, but the rest of the gang here is all in recovery, and it is an ongoing process. Mm-hmm. And that's something that people, we don't live in an ongoing world. We live in a start and stop world, and this is not the way this works. So perhaps you could share some of your experience and with the viewers.
Sure, Jay, thanks. Yes, I wouldn't say that I was a recovered alcoholic. I would say that I was an alcoholic, even though I've been sober for almost 6 years now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very proud of that. I sought out the help of Sophia House. It was a bit of a circuitous route. I had problems with drinking my whole life. Things got worse in university. Something had happened to me in university, and it was the traumatic event that precipitated a downward spiral for me with respect to consuming alcohol and how all my social interactions would proceed from there, because I always used alcohol as a crutch. I used alcohol before and during every social situation, and I lost myself over the years and lost my ability to make friends, have a conversation with a stranger, have small talk within a room of people. I lost the ability to do all those things. And over time, my drinking began to consume my life. It got to a place about 6 or 7 years ago where when I woke up in the morning, the first thing I thought about was how to get everything out of the way for the day to decide when my first drink was going to happen. And things really, within a very short period of time, and I think that's very typical of women alcoholics, they deteriorate very rapidly. And I went from waking up in the morning to thinking about when I was going to have that first drink to hiding vodka in the freezer in the kitchen from my husband. Got to a place where I would find my iPhone feature on my cell phone to see where he was, to see how close he was to the house, so that I could prepare another drink and just put it on the counter when he walked in the door and pretend that was my first one. And when that started to happen, I realized I needed to find help. But I thought I could do it myself. So I started reading about how to quit drinking. I started doing things typical a lot of alcoholics will tell you that they've done. I switched from wine to beer to measuring alcohol out and saying, okay, I'm only going to have this much. And none of those things worked. Then one weekend, my husband and son were out of town for a hockey tournament. And I decided, okay, I'm going to see if I can get some help. So I Googled a general AA for the St. John region and found a phone number and called it. And they gave me an updated meeting schedule. And I snuck out in one sense. I was so ashamed of trying to get help. I not only waited till my husband was out of town, I didn't tell anybody I was going. I went to a meeting that happened at nighttime in the dark, in a church basement where I could sneak in. Because there's a ton of shame associated with trying to find help. And I really considered myself highly educated, and I thought I was going to outsmart alcohol. And I didn't really need anybody else's help, and I was super arrogant about that, which is, again, a pretty typical character trait of alcoholics. And so I went to that first meeting in this church basement, and I will say for every 9 men, let's say, there was one woman in the room, and it was mostly men, and they were mostly older men. And they were great. They were fantastic. But this one fella came up to me at the end of that first meeting, and he said, you might want to check out Sophia House. And I hadn't heard about Sophia House, but he had, and he recognized that there's a place that women can go. And maybe it was because I cried through the entire meeting. He thought maybe I should go to Sophia House instead of staying there. I'm not sure. But I'm very grateful that I was able to go to Sophia House, because one of the other things alcoholics often experience is they think there's nobody like them. They think they are unique. They think that their stories are special and no one else has the same story. And I was shocked to go to Sophia House and hear women tell the same stories of things that had happened to me or things that I had felt. And women drink differently than men do. We all know they experience the world very differently to men, and many of us drank for similar reasons, and so that connection piece was really important. I found that the women in there saw through my BS pretty quickly and were pretty quick to push me a little further, help me work on my honesty, because for some strange reason us alcoholics sometimes are not as honest as we should be, because we've come up with all kinds of excuses and reasons through time to cope.
That's right, denying and
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a very painful place to be.
It is a painful place to be. But I truly connected with women there, even though I was super awkward at first. They recognized that they provided me with a lot of hope. And there we worked on the 12-step program from a woman's viewpoint, actually using some texts that were designed for women. And that made all the difference to me, was finding like-minded people who had similar experiences, who became my cheerleaders. And when I considered myself to be sober, even though I never had a drink, and it's quite unusual I think, to stop drinking and never drink again. I'm fortunate enough that I have, when I stopped, I stopped. Mm-hmm. And because I was able to do that, when I considered myself sober enough, I guess, to walk away from going to the center regularly, then the pandemic hit. So it was very difficult then to continue to participate in the programs. But I will say that I've walked away from Sophia Recovery Centre feeling much more comfortable in the skin that I'm in. I'm no longer ashamed of who I am, and the event that really brought me sort of here and brought me to speaking about Sophia Recovery Centre was I was coming up on my 5-year anniversary of being sober, and I really thought about it for a very long time, about speaking publicly about being an alcoholic, because it was like there was this monkey on my shoulder, on my back, and I was still not being my true authentic self, because I was still hiding, and only a few people knew that I was an alcoholic. My family knew, a couple of friends, but not many other people, because I'm not walking around with a "Hi, my name's Stephanie and I'm an alcoholic" badge. However, I just felt like I wasn't being completely honest without speaking. And even though in this day and age we talk more openly about mental illness in general, we don't talk about addiction in the same way.
Right.
And we don't respect, I don't think we respect people who are recovering from addiction the same way we do someone who's struggling with depression,
Right.
as an example, because there's still some shame associated with it, because people think that addicts and alcoholics have chosen their illness, and that if they just tried harder, they would be better. Yeah. And there's still a lot of that, particularly among, I will say, some of the older generations. I think my parents would fall in that same boat, and they, whenever I would want to talk about something like that, it would typically be, we don't. No, nobody needs to know our business. We don't talk about that. And so I thought I would break that cycle and speak.
I think that shows enormous courage, and thank you very much for sharing that with us, because it really makes a difference. There will be people listening who will relate to this specifically, and it does take courage, and it does help to have support, because you can't, courage by yourself our brains trick us into thinking that they go to the worst possible place, and we're unique and nobody else has done this, and all of the things that you've said. So I think that is a path that I have heard before, and it's wonderful that you when you stopped drinking, you stopped for good. I only know 2 other people, myself and one other person, who have actually done that. It's a very, very rare. And you just decide, okay, I'm going to stop, and you stop, and bingo, and you don't go into all kinds of relapses and everything else, and convulsions and the things that we have got in mind, the stigmas that we've got in mind about alcoholism and everything. It's quite remarkable. So thank you. So, Julie, one of the things that I find fascinating about Sophia House now is this sudden, it's like an explosion of goodness. You're starting a capital campaign for a purpose that you will explain, and you're going to be opening an office in St. Stephen, which I think is so fantastic. So would you like to talk about those 2 things?
100%, yeah. So in 2020, just as we were in the middle of the pandemic, it was time for Sophia to have a strategic plan to look at the future. What do we want to work on? What are our goals for the next 5 years? And we had some statistics on the numbers of people in our communities that struggle with an addiction or with mental health generally. And when we looked at those numbers during the strategic planning time, the board just said, like, we know that our work is transformational for the women that we're helping, and we help about 200 women each year. But we're not even really moving the needle for the broader community. There's so many more women that need this support. And so we're very fortunate. We have this very energetic, very visionary board of directors, and they said, well, what would it take to really make a difference? And that turned into plans for expanding to Charlotte County and just generally building capacity in our organization so that we can serve more women. So we did open, we've sort of taken some baby steps and started offering services here in Charlotte County. We now have an office in St. Stephen, as you mentioned. We have 3 staff that work from that office, and we are expanding into the Kennebecasis Valley as well, and hopefully in the next year into Sussex, as far as Sussex. And those are all locations where women had over the years been calling us and saying, are you coming down here? How can I access support? I've heard about the work that happens there. So it's a really lovely thing to be able to say, yep, we are coming, we are opening an office, here's where you can find support, and here's what the programs are. So of course, all of that for a not-for-profit like Sophia involves finding more funding. You know, we want to provide more services and hire more staff. You have to have more funding. So we have launched a capital campaign. And to be honest, the capital campaign is mostly about building a new home for Sophia in St. John, because we're still in the apartment that we rented when we first opened in 2008, and it's a very small apartment with just 4 rooms. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to do all this more work in a very small space. So we need a new building in St. John where we can have a larger staff and just do more work. Mm-hmm. But we're also really excited about the opportunities to work in this more rural environment here in Charlotte County. We have an office in St. Stephen, but we have also our staff going out to St. George and coming to St. Andrews and trying to find ways to meet needs for women that maybe struggle with transportation. Maybe it's not that easy to get to Sophia House. So we're pretty innovative, we like to think, and we're creative because we're all about bringing the support to the woman where she is. Mm-hmm.
I think that the energy that I've met a couple of your board members and other members of your staff, and I'm thrilled to meet you, Stephanie, because it's the first time I've met anyone who's been in the program at all. And the positive energy is just palpable. And it's why I wanted to reach out and help you all as much as I could. And so we just have a couple of minutes left. Would you like to have a takeaway for people, perhaps just a mental health takeaway?
Since I've started working for Sophia Recovery Centre, I've barely come across anyone in my day-to-day life who can't tell me a story of a family member or a close friend who struggles with addiction. It is everywhere, and it's no respecter of persons. It can affect anyone. And the reason we think it's such a smaller, more contained problem in our communities is because we don't talk about it. And so if there are people listening who find themselves in struggling with it themselves, or they have someone in their circle, you don't have to struggle alone. Half the battle is reaching out for help, and help is available. And there are people who recovery is possible. You don't have to live with the agony that you are living with. It's real, and there's lots of people living, and lots of people at Sophia Recovery Centre that you'll meet that are proof that recovery is real.
It's true. I've seen it in my own family. I've seen remarkable healing that takes place, and it's the healing from unresolved trauma that is what this is all about. So the more awareness that we can bring to this, the better. And you have been really wonderful and forthcoming with information today, and I thank you very much for being here. So thank you all for listening to us today. I hope you've enjoyed the program, and I look forward to seeing you again on another episode of Fundy Tidings.